everyone, Nisa Bell here. Today, I'm kicking off a new series of beginner guitar mod tutorials. So if you're someone who's been wanting to get into guitar modding, but you just don't know where to start, hopefully this will give you a good jumping off point. So let's start by taking a look at a mod that arguably has one of the biggest effects on your guitar sound: replacing your pickup. So why replace your pickups in the first place? Well, there's a number of reasons ranging from damaged or broken pickups to just wanting something with a bit more functionality. But the most common reason I've found is to chase a sound that you're looking for. Pickups can make a huge difference in the way your guitar sounds, how it reacts to pedals and amps, and its dynamic range. The right set of pickups can even elevate your guitar from one that you never pick up to one that you just can't keep your hands off of. Now, am I saying that you have to replace the pickups in any guitar just to make it playable? Absolutely not. To this day, one of my favorite guitars in the world, and hands down the best Strat I've ever played, is a 2001 Made in Mexico Fender with the stock pickups. But if you can't get your guitar to sound the way you want out of any amp or pedal board, a new pickup may be exactly what you're looking for. Now, before we get into it, and if you're new here, first off, hi, thanks for joining. But also, you should know that I'm not a luthier, I'm not a guitar tech, and I have no training whatsoever outside of the projects I take on. So my process may differ a bit from how the professionals do it. And on the flip side, if you're a complete beginner and you're a bit apprehensive about working on your guitar, don't worry. Pickup replacement is easy, involves minimal soldering, and is completely reversible if you're unhappy with the results. If someone like me could do it with no training nor experience, then I have absolute faith that you can too. You got this. So the first step with any project is always research. There's two things you want to ask yourself when considering a new pickup. The first is, what pickup will fit in my guitar? Take note of what type of pickups you already have installed. Are they humbuckers, single coils, P90s, Fidelatrons, Jazzmaster pickups? All of these have specialized body and pickguard routes that are made to accommodate these pickups. So to make things easy on yourself, you'll want to look for something that can fit in the existing routes in your guitar. If you're a bit unsure about what pickup will fit, take measurements of your existing pickups and compare them to the spec sheet of whatever model you're looking at. Keep in mind that pole piece spacing may differ between pickups, so be sure to take and compare that measurement as well, especially when working on anything with an HSS pickup layout. Now, there are ways to make different pickup types fit in your guitar, but that's a bit out of the scope of today's video. That being the case, focusing on the ones that do fit doesn't really limit your options as much as you may think. For example, Seymour Duncan makes single coil size humbuckers, and Lawler makes wide ranges and gold foils that fit right into a Jazzmaster. If there's a particular pickup you want, but your guitar isn't built for it, there's a good chance someone else has been in your shoes and built a solution. So look around a bit, you might find something cool. The second thing to ask yourself is, what sound am I looking for? Product descriptions, resistance values, and magnet alloy composition can only tell you so much, so try to use your ears as much as possible. If there's an artist with a guitar tone you really like, check out what pickups they're playing on. If there's a pickup you're interested in, maybe look at the demos on the brand's site or on YouTube. And if at all possible, see if you can play the pickup yourself. Every one of us plays guitar a little differently, and we all have our own nuances and quirks that make our sound unique. On top of that, it can be a bit challenging to get a sense of how a set of pickups will sound in like your jazz progressive metal fusion band when all you can find are blues demos online. So look up a pickup you're interested in, check if it comes stock in any guitar on the market, and see if your local music store has one on hand that you can try. I'm lucky enough to live in Seattle where there's a ton of music shops around, but if that isn't the case where you are and you're not terrified of meeting new people like I am, then try reaching out on a local music forum to see if anyone has the pickups you're looking for. You might even make some friends in the process. Now that you found your perfect pickup or pickup set, it's time to mod your guitar. To get started, you'll need your guitar. I'll be working on this Greco Les Paul custom that my friend brought in for a different project. Your new pickup or pickups, a screwdriver, a wire stripper, wire cutters, a container for screws and other parts, a test amp and a guitar cable, solder-safe clothing, eye protection, a fan or fume extractor, solder, and of course your soldering iron. You don't need any sort of expensive iron or even one with variable heat. I got mine for like around 20 bucks and it's kind of falling apart, but it still manages to get the job done. Some other things that aren't completely necessary but I find helpful are a soldering iron tip cleaner, a helping hand, a pair of needle nose pliers, a solder sucker or some solder wick, and a couple different colored markers. Start by loosening and removing your strings, then remove any parts that are no longer secured down like tail pieces or bridges. Now you don't have to cut and discard your strings if you don't want to, and instead you can just tie them up and out of the way. But be honest with me, when was the last time you actually changed your strings? I'm looking at you, Connor, I know you're watching. Next, you'll want to access your guitar's electronics. This can be a bit different depending on what kind of guitar you have. For Strat and Jazzmaster style guitars, this will involve simply removing the pickguard, while on a Tele or Jaguar style guitar, you'll need to remove the pickguard as well as the control plates. For solid body Gibson style guitars, you can access all of this by unscrewing the back plate. And if you're working on a semi or hollow body guitar, try unmounting the bridge pickup to see if you can pull the components out of there, and if not, tape up your F-hole, unmount your pots, and remove them through the hole using whatever means necessary. We'll tackle semis and hollow bodies in more detail in a later video. Once you have access to the electronics, it's time to find where your pickup is connected. Trace the leads from the pickup to the pots and locate where they're attached. If you can't tell which wires are coming from your pickup, unmount your pickup with your screwdriver, grab the wire from the base of the pickup, and give it a little tug. You should see some movement where the pickup is connected. If you're working with a standard 2-conductor pickup, there should be only 2 connection points. Typically, the hot lead will be attached to a switch or a pot lug, and the ground will be attached to the back of a pot. If you're working with a guitar with more complex switching like coil splitting or a series parallel switch, your pickup may be connected at 3 to 5 points instead. Either way, make note of all of these connection points, and if you're just starting out, I recommend marking each lead and connection point with a corresponding color. Next, turn on your soldering iron. While that's heating up, put on some eye protection, turn on your fan or fume extractor, maybe throw on an apron. Do anything you can to distract yourself, because if you're just sitting there waiting for your iron to heat up, it's gonna feel like an eternity. To check if your iron is hot enough, touch a small bit of solder to the tip. It should melt and smoke almost immediately. Once it's hot, we want to tin the tip of the iron. If you're new to soldering or you haven't heard that term before, tinning refers to coating the tip of the iron in a thin layer of solder. This prevents oxidation and increases the conductivity of the iron, making it easier to transfer heat to the components. To do this, I like to clean the tip of the iron, apply some solder, and clean the tip once more. A well-tinned tip should look smooth and shiny. After you've tinned your iron, let's desolder our hot lead. This will be the one that's attached to your switch or the lug on your volume pot. Grab the lead using your hand or pliers and pull back with a little bit of force. We don't want to rip the lead off the contact point, but we want to create enough tension that the lead detaches once the solder melts. Once you have the lead secure, place the tip of your tinned iron onto the contact point where the lead meets the component. Hold the iron there until the lead comes loose and detaches. If you've been holding your iron there for a while and the lead hasn't budged, re-tin your iron and try again. Once the lead is detached, move it out of the way and heat the switch or pot lug with your iron to melt away any excess solder. If you have one, you can use a solder sucker or some solder wick to help out with this. Repeat this process with your ground and other leads if applicable. Now, a quick note about desoldering your ground. Oftentimes, multiple wires are grounded to the same point on the back of a pot. Because of this, desoldering the ground from the pickup may also detach the other ground connections. If this happens to you, don't worry, it's an easy fix. First, detach the pickup ground wire from any other wires if it's still connected. Then, reattach the rest of the ground wires back to the contact point. Once you have your leads detached, make note of how your pickup is mounted, including the position of your hot and ground leads. Then unmount the pickup from the pickguard or body and remove the pickup. Now that the old pickup is out, let's install the new one. Start by transferring your markings from the old pickup leads to the new ones. If you're unsure about which wire is which, refer to the documentation that came with your pickup packaging. Then mount the new pickup into the pickguard or body, making sure to keep the same orientation as the old one. Guide the new pickup leads along the same path as the old ones and trim them to size if necessary. Be sure not to trim them too short, as you still want a little bit of wiggle room to work with. Once the leads are in place and cut to length, we need to expose the ends. If you're using a pickup with a cloth-covered lead, you can simply push back the cloth. If you have a pickup with plastic insulation instead, strip the ends so you have just enough to work with. And finally, if you're working with a Gibson-style braided lead, the outer braided metal is your ground while the inner wire is your hot. Once the leads are exposed, we're going to need to tin the ends. Similar to what we did with our iron, we want to coat the end of the lead in a thin layer of solder. This makes the ends more rigid, keeps the individual strands together, and helps form that initial connection with the contact point. I like to do this by holding the wire with my helping hand, tinning my iron, and placing the tip right under the wire making contact. This heats the wire itself, so when I touch the solder to it, the solder melts evenly onto the wire. Now that the leads are tinned, all we have to do is attach them. Let's start with the hot lead. Sometimes you can sort of wedge the lead into the lug and it'll stay in place, but if not, you can use a helping hand to hold the wires where they need to be. I try to avoid hooking or looping the wire onto the lug, since that can make it harder to detach if I want to do more work in the future. Now, once the lead is where it needs to be, place your iron right where the lead meets the lug and touch your solder to the connection point. You don't need a ton, just enough to fill the hole of the lug. Try to avoid touching the solder to the tip directly, since we want the solder from the tinned wire and the additional solder to form one cohesive joint. Once the joint looks solid, let it cool and give the lead a little tug to make sure it's secure. If you're working with a guitar with more than 2 leads, follow the same process to reattach the rest, keeping track of how the old pickup was wired. Be sure to consult your wiring diagram for the particular switching you're working with. And for the last bit of soldering, let's attach the ground. Here's the way that I like to do ground wires. First, use your soldering iron or a small file to scratch a small spot on the back of the pot. Next, heat the same spot with your iron and touch the solder to the scratched area. This will deposit a small glob of solder onto the back of the pot. Then to finish, hold your tinned ground lead right on top of the solder glob, place your iron on top of both, and let them melt together. And with that, your new pickup should be all wired up. Turn off your iron and plug your guitar into your test amp. Using something metal like a screwdriver, tap the pull pieces of the pickup to make sure you're getting signal. You should hear that tapping coming out of your guitar amp. While you keep tapping, adjust the volume and tone knobs as well as your pickup selector to make sure that everything is working as intended. If you have another pickup or two to install, follow the exact same steps and you should be all good. After that, it's just a matter of replacing your pickguard, control place, or backplate, replacing any parts like tail pieces or bridges, and restringing your guitar. Once your guitar is restrung, be sure to check any middle pickup positions if you have them. If the sound is like super thin and much quieter than the individual pickups, it means that the new pickup is wired out of phase. Don't worry, this is a super easy fix. Just open the guitar back up and swap the hot and ground lead positions. After that, you should be all set. Well, hopefully that covers just about everything you need to replace your first pickup. And for those of you who are not beginners but checked out this video anyway, let me know down below what I missed. I wish you all the best in all your future modding adventures going forward, and feel free to let me know what else you'd like to see from this series. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'll see you in the next one. Happy playing!